So welcome. Tonight is our 11th Paige Hazlegrove Lecture in Glass Art. Paige was the director of the MIT Glass Lab. She believed in attracting artists to MIT to discuss their work. And after Paige's passing, we decided to continue that tradition. We had some great speakers in past years. Just an example is Dante Marioni and, of course, Dick Marquis in the past couple of years. Great glassblowers and well-known throughout the world. But tonight we have probably the most recognized glass artist in our time, Dale Chihuly. His exhibitions are monumental in size and scope. Dale's a native of Tacoma, Washington. His studies included stays at the University of Wisconsin and Rhode Island School of Design. Of course, he started the RISD program in glass many years ago, and he's also the founder of the famous Pilchuck Glass School. You know, whether it's chandeliers in Venice or sculpture and Kew Gardens, Dale's art is really an inspiration. So Dale is going to speak to us tonight about his work, and I hope he can hear me out there because he's supposed to walk in right now. Thanks so much.
How many people are going to watch the debate tonight? All right. I couldn't hear him, so I don't know what he said. I hope I don't repeat too much. I was born in Tacoma, Washington, which is close to Seattle, and my dad was a butcher, and my mother a housewife. I didn't do very well in school, so I didn't want to go to college. My father had just passed away, and my brother, my only sibling, died flying an airplane for the Navy. And my mother really wanted me to go to college, and she never asked much. So I went to college down the street from our house, and I wasn't doing very well there. But I decorated my mother's basement and made it into kind of a rec room and very kind of mid-century modern. And so I thought I'd be a real good interior designer. So I transferred to the University of Washington. Fortunately, you only needed a C average to get in there at that time. And it was $100 a quarter to go to school there. And I went over there to Seattle, and I joined the Deke House, a fraternity that they used that fraternity to pattern Animal House. And believe me, it was just like that. So after a couple years of not doing very well, I had to take architecture first, and I managed to get C's probably, and I decided to quit going to school and go to Europe and travel because I just felt like I was, never going to succeed at anything. And I traveled all around Europe, and I ended up working on a kibbutz in Israel, and I met some interesting people there. And all of a sudden, when I went back to school, I decided to be a really good student. And I just flipped from being, I kind of thought of myself as going from a boy to a man, you might say. And I graduated, well, by about this time, I had to take a weaving course. And I decided to weave little bits of glass into tapestries that would go in the window. In order to do that, I got a little pottery oven, about a foot square, and I could fuse it and overlap it and put wires in it and do things like that would allow me to weave it into the tapestry. And I'd never seen glass blowing, but I had a photograph of an old glass blower on the wall in this little studio I had in the basement of a friend's house. And one night I melted a bunch of stained glass in this oven, and I dipped a pipe in there and gathered up the glass. It wasn't a blow pipe, it was just a pipe from the hardware store. And I took it out and gathered it up and blew down the blowpipe, and I got a bubble. And from that point on, I wanted to be a glass blower. So I quit working for an architect. At this point, I was working as a designer just out of school. And I moved up to Alaska to become a commercial fisherman so I could go to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin. Had just started a glass blowing program for graduate program. And I went back there and learned how to blow glass. I wasn't interested in making, functional shapes and bowls and things. And right away, I started making more sculptural things. I applied for a Fulbright, and I got to go to Venice after that, and worked out on the island of Murano, where they have all the glass blowers. And then the Rhode Island School of Design asked me if I would start a glass program for them in 1968. And I lasted about 12 or 14 years there, and I started exhibiting my work and had a few museum shows and a couple of galleries. And by 1982, my income from my glass was $18,000 a year. And that matched my salary as a professor, and so I quit. But I had a great time there, and I had fabulous students. If any of you get down to Rhode Island, yeah, we're in Boston. If you get down to Providence, for the next 2 or 3 months, I have an exhibit there in their new building that they just added to. It's a beautiful museum, too, by the way, if you've never been there. And there's another exhibit of students that worked with me, and they all still live in Providence. There's 8 or 10 students, and all of them are successful and manage to live off their work. None of them have a job, and it was just a great group of students all along. And also in the meantime, myself and some friends started the Pilchuck Glass School outside of Seattle, about an hour up in the foothills. And I got a little grant in 1971 for $2,000, which I chose to start this little school, but never meant for it to last more than the summer. But here it is. I don't know how many years later is that. 30-some years later, and now the budget, it only works in the summer. And now the budget's $3 million a summer. And we have students come from all over the world, faculty as well. And that's made Seattle this great center for glass, because everybody that works with glass works in a team. And glass blowing is kind of expensive, it might $2,000 or $3,000 a day to run a shop. And you need a team of, at least 3 or 4 people. Sometimes I use as many as 16 people if the pieces are really big, working on the same piece. And so if you want to be a glass artist, cast glass, engraved glass, whatever type of glass you like, and you want to learn about that and you want to work, the logical place to go is Seattle. Because Seattle has now over 100 glass shops in the area. And I don't know, a few thousand glass blowers. What I'm going to do for you tonight is my videographer, Peter West, who's probably up in that sound booth, and has made about 8 films on me over the last 10 years. Even more. He started when he was a student. He went to Evergreen College in Washington. And we're going to show you mostly 5-minute clips, except for the first one is 10 minutes, which he added tonight, and I don't really know how it is, but if you put it in, it's got to be good. And it's my working with a team in Vian, France. It's a little village kind of in southern France. And I always work, when we go to other countries, I always work 50-50 kind of with glassblowers from that factory. And we often don't know the language, but it sort of doesn't make any difference. You're able to communicate. And so we'll see. I haven't seen this one in a long time. This is about 8 years old. And all I can remember for sure is that we made 2 containers of glass, which isn't really a lot for us. And we shipped them back to Tacoma, where I have kind of a shipping, receiving studio. And one of the containers fell off the ship and it's forever gone. So, and some of the work you'll see in this would have been works that went to the bottom of the ocean. Okay, Peter, and I'm going to, by the way, if you have any questions about what I show you, I'm going to stop between each segment. I'll tell you what they are. Vian, Finland, Venice, Icicle Creek, Jerusalem, Wall of Ice, Gardens and Glass. We might not show them all because it depends how the questions go, but feel free to ask questions, and we'll get through as many of these as we can. Okay, Peter. There he is. We were only in Vian for about a week, and so you have all this great crew that we brought along, plus a great crew that's there to work with us, and it's one of those things you wake up and you know that you're going to do good work. You know that you're going to have good people with you. Out of that, no matter how I felt, up or down or otherwise, each day was going to have results. You just push it to insist that it has that.
And by going to the factory and having this unlimited amount of glass, and that's something that's unheard of. I mean, we had, a 20,000-pound furnace. And so you had a lot of glass going through your hands. I mean, we went through over 2,500 pounds of glass went through these hands every day.
Well, that's where the experimentation comes in. You make a bunch of these and see what happens. Martel, I wouldn't mind having you, start out by, trying to make these things.
Done.
So then we can make, from what Martin makes here, we can either hang these individually, we can tether these out into the river.
Oh, yeah.
We could hang them from a tree, or we can make a chandelier out of them. Whatever we want to do.
What color would you like it? Is the green?
I don't know. What about white?
Just the white. I think white could be beautiful in a crystal.
White and crystal? We like the idea of coming to France because France has a great tradition of glass. Next to Italy, probably the biggest tradition of glass making is in France. So we always wanted to go somewhere in France to a factory. That's quick.
He's worked in glass his whole life. His family works in glass.
He started at 14 years old. He's a wild guy for glass.
Explain to him in French. He has to wear facial protection. He must be able to watch. Besides, no, that beautiful nose. We don't want to burn that beautiful nose.
He's not having to put a knuckle in it yet. They don't seem to want to put the knuckle in. Does that matter on these big long ones first? You're not going to be able to hang them. You're going to be able
Won't be able to tether them either.
Yeah, all right.
Tom? Yeah. Bring me over some of these tall ones.
Against the trees.
Yeah. Anybody that can lift one of these, bring it on over. 2. Wow. Isn't that good? I could have had them made them like that. Would have been easy. Because don't they look good like that? And the other way they'll look is like this. Ugh. Ugh. There must be 1,000 different molds here. I mean, I suppose these represent what's on the shelves here. You know, and to be able to look at kind of what, I don't know, 70 years of different lampshades that they've made. Some incredible pieces here. What Martin's doing over there right now is blowing into these molds, and we're pulling off necks, and then we're going to put it together as a chandelier. We've been to a lot of factories where they've had molds. We've never tried real hard to get something out of these molds. Actually, Martin pushed me, said, let's work in the molds. And I said, oh, well, you want to work in the molds, you try it. So he tried it, and he says, come on over, look at this. And it was great. So I said, let's go. Let's, work on the molds the whole time.
Just put that one away like it is. I'm not going to stretch it.
No, I wouldn't.
Go ahead. Bravo.
Beautiful thing. Maybe I should show this one to Martin. Wow, look at that.
The weirder the better for Dale. The hard part is to use a mold that makes an industrial shape that looks normal, and then somehow integrate it into something that's natural. It's been very, very challenging. The hardest part is to get the mold to blow with detail, but then to have the end continue to stretch and not get too thin to break and not overblowing the mold and hot enough to have detail. So it's very, very complicated.
Those are going to be chandeliers?
That's a good question with Dale. You never know with Chihuly. Sometimes they're hanging from the ceiling, sometimes they're stuck in the ground, sometimes they're floating in the pond. My job is to make interesting shapes.
Okay.
That looks like a kind of a nice one.
Would you like me to blow into this? I can blow that with a long stem on the end of it. Piece of cake. Piece of cake.
Voila!
So that I can have a ball and a stem on. Okay?
It's pretty cool.
All right, it's coming up next.
On.
Whoa, look at that color. Look at that. Whoa. God, hanging out of a tree, these things have turned me on. They look like some kind of weird red fruit or something. Let's see what it looks like over here. That's going to make an exquisite chandelier. That's going to be a piece of sculpture. Damn it, I like that shape. Think in terms of them standing up out of the ground. So you blow a bolt, make sure the stake can go up. And it can be pretty delicato. Damn, these are good. I'd like to start hanging. I wonder whether we should hang some of these. If we had a chain here, throw up a chain, let's hang some of these. We'll hang them up right here for now. It's exciting to come in, and make something you've never made before. That's what we try to do, but that's a very difficult challenge. To come in, you know that if you don't do something new, you're not going to be happy. So you look, you try to find something, things go wrong, all of a sudden nobody's making anything interesting, but then you get lucky and something starts to happen. Hang the more organic ones. Ones like, the wild ones. Jake, do those first. Like this one, this one, this one, this one. The ones that have a little movement. Those and down in there. Maybe I'm the creative one day, maybe they're the creative one the next day. Back and forth. one person is hot, another person is slow. And so you play off of each other. That's how any team works, I think. Hopefully that's a creative team anyway. I don't really think about what I do very much. You know, it just sort of happens. I would respond to, and then I proceed to work. And I don't usually know exactly where it's going. I like it to feel like, was it made by man or was it made by nature? Like those big white pieces we were carrying, if you had those, found those in the woods, in the forest, in the jungle, you might not know whether it was man-made or nature-made. I like that aspect of it.
I hate to tell you, but the red chandelier is in the bottom of the ocean. And I've been meaning, Peter, to make that again. And so I don't know if we maybe we should go over to Vian and maybe we should just go there and make it, because I don't think we can make that red glass that good. Or else we have to go over there and get the molds, because these molds are difficult to make and they're expensive. Like $10,000 a mold. Any questions about Vian? But you were right. I almost didn't show that one. And Peter said, "Oh, it's good." So I liked it. Yeah. Now we'll go to Finland, and Finland was the beginning of going to 4 or 5 countries that I would make pieces. Mostly chandeliers, some towers, some other sculptures that I wanted to send to Venice, that we would hang these pieces over the canals of Venice and in the little palazzos. But I went to Finland first with a big crew of about 30 people. And I knew about this factory. Somebody said they'd let me work there, which they did. But I hadn't gotten permission from Venice yet. I didn't go to Venice until after Finland. I'll try to remember to tell you that story. But let's look at Nuutijärvi, Finland. Small, beautiful little place, 200-year-old factory. 300 or 400 people lived in the village, and they all worked in the factory.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Wow. 3, 3, 3, 3.
Dale's work is, a lot of the times, is basically charting new ground.
You gotta help me remember.
You have a material that has a history of, say, 5,000 years. Glassblowing's been around for 2,000 years. And Dale's the first one that comes along and decides to play with the properties and the fluidity of the glass and let it go off center.
guys over here. We'll talk about this. Let's put a neck on them.
To explain to somebody something, you gotta make a visual statement. Verbal is not enough.
In the optical mold,
So this man can really draw. He has incredible velocity, great hand. So you gotta have both the brain and the hand. It comes from here and comes out from here, see?
but big cobalts.
Dale has a unique way of working. First, he starts off with drawings, which sort of give a sense or a spirit of what the work is supposed to be.
What's interesting is that you can make something that's never been made before. You're making something that no one's ever seen, no one ever thought of, and has power.
As a Fulbright Scholar to Venice, Dale was first exposed to the idea of blowing glass with a team. This quickly became the way he liked to work. Over the course of many years, he has trained hundreds of glassblowers who work and travel with him all over the world. And Dale, having worked with a lot of these specific glassblowers for certain lengths of time, they pretty much already know what Dale wants. And it's sort of this trust and space that he gives the glassblowers that is creating some of the new ideas and new work.
The whole project is centered around the river. And it's made me think about, how important the water is to my work. Or maybe as important as it is to my being. I think water is extraordinarily creative. And I find that I'm always drawn to water.
This is where it's all happening, down here in the river. Some things coming out of those rocks would be nice.
So that was Finland. I think we were only there for 7 days. Some of the factories we've gone as much as 3 weeks, but we made about a dozen pieces in 7 days, and we left a few of the crew behind to pack it up, which is no little job. All the way up there.
Yeah, what happens after what we see? Where do these pieces end up? Are they still in Finland or are they gone?
It depends. We sent everything back to Tacoma that we made after going to all these countries. And we already had built we built most of the pieces, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to send to Venice. I had 2 or 3 times as many pieces as I needed to go to Venice, where I think we had 14 pieces we put up in Venice. But they went back to Tacoma, where I've got a big team working there, just taking, unpacking and packing glass. And they brought it in and cleaned it, and then we decided what was going to go to Venice. And I'm making this kind of a long answer. But as I told you, I hadn't been to Venice yet. And right after Finland, I went down to Venice, stopping off in Berlin to see the wrapping of the Reichstag, the Christo Jean-Claude piece that was pretty sensational. And then we got to Venice. I knew a couple people, and they got an appointment for me to see the Minister of Culture, I think would be the closest name in English. And I met with him, and he liked the idea. Venice, hardly anybody gets to do anything to Venice. That is a very guarded city. And, but he liked the idea, and we weren't going to hurt anything. And he said okay. And then I don't know how many months I had left. It was about a year, I think, before we were going to do the project by the time we got done making glass. So a couple months later, I thought maybe I better go back there because I don't have anything. They never wrote me a letter or anything saying I could do this. And I went back there and talked to him again, and the same thing, a great idea, yes, you've got permission. And I went back 5 times and never could get a letter. And so I rolled the dice and sent about 14 containers, a couple of months before, because it was going by ocean. And there are a number of different agencies that could have stopped us from putting up the show. The gondolieres or the taxi drivers or the fire department or any one of them. And they're a little bit like that. You never know what they're going to do. But nobody stopped me. And nothing was vandalized. It was up for a month. Any other question about, do I see one up there? Mostly I paint and draw, and I've got 2 studios in Seattle. One is called the Boathouse, where we do the glass blowing. It's right on the water in a little Lake Union, in a very beautiful spot. And then I have a bigger one a couple miles away in what we call the Ballard Building, and it's probably maybe 60,000 square feet. And that's where we build everything. And it's got 3 large studios. And I do most of my painting and drawing either while they're blowing glass, but lately I've been doing it more on the weekends in the Ballard when there's nobody there, except I always have a few assistants help me no matter what I'm doing. Yeah. And but it's quiet, and no, I guess you might say making these movies is another thing that we do. But I don't do much writing. I never really. Let me just go back to you for a minute. So when the work went to Venice, you probably wanted to know what happened to it after that. It goes back again to Tacoma, and I do 3 or 4 museum shows a year, and 3 or 4 gallery shows a year, and 2 or 3 botanical garden shows a year, which if we have time, you'll see some of that. That's the last thing on here. And but we've shown the work in most of the botanical gardens now. The 9th one is coming up in Phoenix in about a month. And we fortunately got to show at Kew Garden in London, which is the best known botanical garden, the biggest probably. So I just keep rotating the work. I mean, I'll often change the piece, or I might put 2 pieces together, or I might throw it out. Some of that goes on too. But I do have a large inventory of work, no doubt about that. And I've got a great crew. I've got 107 people that work with me in one way or the other. And I don't think that counts any filmmakers. Yeah. So we'll go, I don't see any hands, so we'll, oops, I shouldn't have said that. The,
You have a whole separate body of work that you sell?
you know what I sell the most? I should have mentioned that. I'm glad you brought it up. About 70% of my sales are architectural commissions and projects. Right now we're working in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Singapore. What's the name of that gambling place? Macau. We're doing an 80-foot high sculpture in Las Vegas coming up. And then we do a lot of projects in people's homes, you know, smaller chandeliers or banks and hotels. And I do about 60 projects a year. 60. Yes.
Just saw your wonderful exhibit at the Dion Museum in San Francisco. Any chance of bringing that to the spectacular?
Well, she's talking about a show I just had at the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, which is a beautiful new museum, all copper. And we had a show there in 11 rooms. And I really wanted to do the best job I could. Not that I wouldn't normally, but this one we really went all out for. And we built all 11 rooms in my studio. So we pre-built the entire exhibition. And then we photographed it. I've got a couple of full-time photographers. And then, let's see, we installed 4 sculptures 3 months ahead of time. One outside the DeYoung, it was 30 feet high, and one outside the Legion of Honor, which is another museum about a mile away that's under the same directorship. And then 2 pieces inside the Legion of Honor. It was kind of to let people know that the show was coming, which I'm happy to say broke their attendance record. And we photographed those pieces right away, too. So 3 months ahead of time, we had photographs of all of the pieces, including the ones that we put up. You know, that way we could photograph them on location. And so that allowed us to make a beautiful catalog before the show opened. You know, normally when you have a museum show, the catalog doesn't come out until about the show's over with, because it takes about 3 months to produce a catalog. I hope I answered whatever you asked.
What medium do you use to sketch and paint your sculptures?
Mostly I use liquid acrylics from a company called Golden, upstate New York. And they come in 4-ounce little tubes. They come in bigger tubes too, but I like the 4-ounce. And I do most of the drawing really right from the tube. But I use brushes. Lately I've been, for the last year or so, I've done a lot of drawings. And I painted them mostly with acrylic, but some charcoal, some metals, powders. And then right after I made them, I used a torch and I burnt them. It actually boiled the acrylic, and it made this, it raises up and makes a texture that I really like. And I used to use pencils a lot, or colored pencils, and I would take, the smallest size paper I use is 20 by 30. And the next size, I use Arches watercolor paper from France. The next size is twice as big, and the next size is twice as big as that one. So it comes in 3 sizes, unless you want to get a roll. And I used to draw a lot, and I'd put rice or beans underneath the paper, and I'd press down real hard. Oh, I usually would, well, just about always, would work with a handful of pencils, like about 40. And so it would pick up all that texture, whatever you put in it. That came from being around the glass shop, because sometimes we use little bits of glass to color it. And I was looking at this glass, and I was drawing, and I said, uh-oh, you know. So I started off that with the glass, and found out that rice works just as well. Okay, all right, one more.
With your drawings, do you have an idea before you start actually working on them, or do you just go with the
It's a little of each. I usually kind of start with an idea of what I'm thinking about doing. Most of them really are not for the glass. I just draw, but I use my glass really more as something to inspire the drawing. So, what did you say? Did I what? Oh, yeah. No, so I usually have some idea so I can get started. I work really fast. And, but a lot of times the idea that I'm starting with, a lot of times it'll change. And for me, I don't like to spend too much time on a drawing or a painting. I find that they're not as good, really, if I work on them too much. All right, let's see. Now you're going to see Venice. You want to see actually, my favorite city is both Venice and Jerusalem. Those are my two favorite cities, and you're going to get to see about 5 minutes of each. All right, Peter.
You know, this project just sort of started off by Chihuly over Venice, chandeliers hanging in Venice. So we started by going to the first country, Finland, and then that was so, you know, inspiring and so interesting and so unusual and different from anything I'd ever done, that we then went on to the next country, Ireland, and then Mexico, and brought all those chandeliers, put them in all those containers that you see on the other side of Venice.
on this little island. It's about a mile long. And we're going to see a couple of them working today. We're going to work in Pino's shop and have Pino and Lino working there. They're going to be working separately, side by side, making chandelier parts. And from that, we'll try to make a nice piece. Working with Pino and Lino together or separately is an extraordinary experience. I mean, you're talking about two of the most gifted glassblowers, not just in the 20th century, but I think in all times. I mean, I think these two of the really extraordinary masters in the history of glass. That is true about those two Italians, Lino and Pino. And one is more of a glass blower. They both blow glass, but one is more of a glass blower, and the other is more of a sculptor who works solid more. But they're without a doubt the two best living glass artists, craftsmen. And I think, you know, from looking at museums, I've never been able to see anything that matches what they've been able to do. Hope we can keep them around as long as we can. You know that shot of the Doge's Palace one, Peter? We got to have a longer shot of that. You barely see that one, and that's such a good one. All right. Oh, Icicle Creek. Okay. Here you get to see a piece that we had very little time to make it. And not only that, I had to go to Japan. And so I wasn't there for most of it. And it's in a resort about 3 hours from Seattle up in the mountains where it happens to snow really more than any place in the world. It has the world's largest snowfall, Mount Baker. But this is right next to Mount Baker. And when we installed it, over the weekend, it snowed 6 feet, and we were stuck there for 6 days. And it was commissioned by a great gal. I think you'll see her. You see her, don't you, Peter? Yeah. All right. Oh, did I didn't. We'll roll one more, and then I'll answer any question you want. All right, one question.
Well, if we get to see the botanical gardens, then I can ask you the question after. But there was one configuration, chandelier, must have been 60 feet tall at the St. Louis, botanical gardens. It was the big blue chandelier that was in the entranceway of the botanical gardens major building. And I wanted to ask about specifically, do you pack every single piece in foam? How do you get those pieces from point A to point B and back to A?
You know, it's different for one piece to the next. But if it's a chandelier, most of them are pretty strong, like the one you're going to see coming up. All we have to do is use heavy-duty cardboard boxes. They're triple strength, but it's still a lot cheaper than a wooden crate. And you know the dividers that come in a box, or that can come in a box, like a beer box. Put foam on the bottom of the box, then just drop the pieces in, put a piece of foam on the top, and you can put, 15 or 30 pieces to a box. And if things get, larger, more delicate, let's say like the pieces I was throwing off the bridge, even though you wouldn't think they were so delicate, then we'll wrap them with bubble wrap or foam, if it's really delicate, we'll actually cut the foam to fit the piece. And that's what, you know, those 20 people do all day long in Tacoma, working on and shipping out the containers. And we, if I didn't tell you, once we ship it, we go to the location and we unpack it. So no one ever handles the glass but us. All right.
More and more I began putting things outside and discovering, as I suspected, that the glass could take it. I'd just come off of Chihuly over Venice, and so I thought it would be an interesting time to roll the dice and do an outside project. I was holding off on doing the project for Harriet Bullitt up in Leavenworth, which is up in the Cascade Mountains, and I went up to Sleeping Lady Resort and visited with Harriet and got permission from her to do it outside. She's a great client. Said, look at Dale, whatever you want to do. And so Harriet and I found this granite rock 10 feet high, and then I had to go off to Japan. Before I went off to Japan, I designed the chandelier part, which would be an icicle, anywhere from 2 or 3 to 4 or 5 feet long. And there'd be 1,000 icicles coming out of this granite rock. I designed the part, got the drawings going, went off to Japan, and then developed the piece over the voicemail.
To listen to new messages, press 1. First new message from
Chihuly. Swing it out, blow it up. Swing it out, blow it up. Different sizes. You can do something that goes straight. You can do something that curve. But let's keep this chandelier experimentation going on. I mean, since, you know, we did all this great experimentation in Finland, let's carry that same great experimentation on in our own facility, because we can do it here just as well as we can do it anywhere. All right. Let me know what you think, Joe, and anybody else. I'll say this again. I've said it before. You've got to
Testing the temperature here.
mile-an-hour wind, and you've got to design it for the maximum snow load, which gets on that rock. But I don't, you know, I doubt if it ever gets more than 4 or 5 feet up on that rock.
We core drilled the rock down inside this granite rock 3 feet with a 6-inch stainless steel pipe coming out of the rock 10 feet, and we built a stainless steel armature that we had a strip heater inside the armature, so that if the snow built up too much, we could turn the strip heater on and melt the snow.
And I'd like the sort of icicles to kind of go down straight and then to kind of flare up at the top. It'd be a lot easier if they didn't flare at the top, probably. But in terms of the wind, but I think it'd be nicer if they did. We'll have to build it and see what happens. When in doubt, you know, be a little loose with it, okay? Don't get it too tight. So I would tend to hang a little less in the middle. That's my guess, and to, you know, let loose a little bit in a spot or two, so it's not too symmetrical. Just get me some good 4x5, you know, and have fun with it. You know, really cut loose and try things. And
Message menu. To delete, press 1. Thank you. Goodbye.
We dedicated the chandelier. It snowed like 6 feet that weekend. We were stuck in Leavenworth for, I think, 6 days or more. We had a great time. She's got a fabulous chef, and there's a pub there, and there's a hot tub there. And so the Icicle Creek chandelier survived the winter. It surprised the deer, who were very curious about the piece. We were very concerned about whether it truly would survive the winter, and it's my understanding that not one of the 1,000 pieces is broken.
I'm happy to say that it still has never had a broken piece, and it's been about 6 or 7 years, and it's also never been cleaned. People ask me sometimes, gee, how am I going to clean it? And I came up with an answer for that. I say, you know, Chartres Cathedral, the windows are 500 years old, and they finally cleaned them after 500 years, and most people don't like them now. They,
I want to ask about the lighting of it, either just for photographs, or do you have lighting from within?
No, we always, not, rarely are they lit from within. I do that a couple of times. I've done it with neon, because neon never burns out. And LED lights, you know, they're kind of new. They're pretty good too. They last about 10 years, but and they're use a lot less electricity. Yeah, well, that was definitely lit from 2 or 3 trees from about 50 feet away, and I learned. I mean, that's kind of a conservationist camp, so we weren't about to do anything that it wasn't perfect, and I was surprised to hear that you can. I'm trying to remember this right, but I think they went right through the tree with a bolt, and that doesn't hurt the tree. We don't think, anyway. In the black.
Yeah, my question isn't about installation, it's more about the process of blowing the glass. So I know that you like to work spontaneously with your team. If you go to a place like France, or you go to a place like when you're in Waterford in Ireland, those facilities are so very different, and their approaches are so different. How do you prepare for that?
We don't, you know. We just we go over there. You know, as you could probably tell from the video, I've got some really cool guys on the team and gals, and we meet with their glass blowers. And they decide who they want to give us, and you know, those glass blowers are so bored with what they do. You know, the poor guys. Like, if you were a glass blower at Waterford, you might be making the same goblet your whole life. Not just a day, but forever. And so they all work symmetrically, and so we don't very often. And what I'll do is, the way a glassblowing team works is, there's one guy called the gaffer, or the master, and he or she runs the team, a little bit like a sailboat. So he's responsible for making sure everything goes right. And I always had one of my guys be the gaffer, and so they didn't, you know, have to worry about not understanding what we were going to make. And then from that point on, they'll get started, and they'll make a couple pieces, because we don't, you know, do different things all the time. Usually one team will be, you know, half a day or a day on the same kind of idea. Not the same exact shape, but made in a similar way. And anyway, so we start working, and I tell you, after we're there for usually a couple weeks, we always have a party, and these guys end up crying. They're so sorry to leave the factory. You know, they get so bonded. So it really works itself out. Not that we don't do some things that, you know, that are no good, but I sure try to give them things to do that I think will work. But I want to do new things too, so I've got to roll the dice. Let's see, I'll go to you, and then all the way in the back to you two.
I have a question about the assembly of the chandeliers.
Yes.
Is each time you put them together,
I get the question.
the
I was putting a tower up in the lobby of the White House for the Millennium, and Hillary came by and said, I knew her a little bit, and she said, do you number those pieces? And I said, do I look like the kind of guy that would number them? All the way in the back, either one of you.
Are you still actively kind of giving them your creative vision?
Yeah, I don't blow at all anymore. For a while, I'd blow occasionally just to keep my fingers in it, but I don't work at all anymore. It depends what they're making, and as how much I'm there, right there with them. But I've sure got some great glass blowers that work with me. It allows me to also, really ever since I lost my eyesight in 1976, it's always been difficult after that. Not so much from the depth perception, but more from the peripheral vision. Because as you could see, everybody's all over the place. And so it always was harder for me. And it was much harder for them, knowing that I, couldn't see out that side. And then I dislocated my right shoulder in the surf in La Jolla a couple years later, and had a kind of a bad. It took a long time to get it fixed. I never did the right thing, and then I really couldn't blow glass if you don't have a right arm. And I had a great young guy working with me, William Morris, and he had become a really good glass blower. And so I said, Billy, you're going to have to take over on this, and which he did for about the next 12 years, and then went on to become a great artist, craftsman on his own. A lot of the people that work with me, like the guy in the building, I don't know, Martin Blank, he was the first guy that you started to hear, and he's got a great career. He's in Seattle. But yet if I want them to work for me, if I need something, if they have time, they're happy to still work for me. So I'm pretty lucky. Okay, and it was, yes.
How do you usually design the way the pieces are going to be assembled? What's the process of that usually like?
I don't know if I heard all of that, but how do I design the piece not knowing?
How do you usually figure out how they're going to be assembled?
Well, it's I don't figure it out very much, and a lot of it's from doing so much work. You have a pretty good idea. I mean, if I draw a piece, I'm going to have a pretty good idea of how it's going to go together with another piece like it, it's mostly gravity. We start from the bottom, and they're wired on to what we call an armature. I don't know if you noticed that. I happened to notice at one spot in the Venice tape that they were hooking the pieces on to just a chain. Did you see that? So, I mean, it can be as simple as a chain, or it can be more complicated like Icicle Creek, or you can start putting those together. So you have, the piece might go like this. But whatever that armature is has a lot to do with what the piece is going to look like when you're done, and whatever the pieces of glass look like are also going to have a lot to do with how it looks. And it's, and the people that work with me, that put the pieces together, they do that. They work on those pieces all the time. And so, and by the way, some of them are better than others. Some of them just have more of a feeling for how it goes together. And then we pack it up and ship it out, always shipping out about let's say an extra 10% of parts, in case who's ever building it makes it a little too fat, or you need some more parts, and we like to have extra parts just to put away, just in case something ever happened. We just had a piece in Dubai, and there's an Atlantis hotel just opened in Dubai. There's also one in the Bahamas that we worked on, and and damned if it didn't get a big fire just before it opened, right by our piece. So I sent over a crew of 5 to figure out what was going on and take it apart, and I think it had 2,000 pieces. It was 33 feet high. And so they got there, and I've never really talked to them, but I know from talking to somebody that they were able to clean the piece while it was still together, and nothing broke. Glass can be pretty strong, if the fire were coming at it and it started to get hot, then it didn't get hot too fast. You know, if it went, let's say, from 100 degrees to 200, let's say every 5 minutes, that wouldn't be hot enough to make it break. And it could go all the way up to 1,500 degrees before it started to slump. Okay, darn it, I hate not to ask your questions. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have a story about a great glass failure or disaster.
You mean more than that container? Yeah, I've had, I'm not going to try to explain what they look like, because I'm actually not thinking of anything at the moment, but I can tell you that I've done a lot of projects where I thought I was doing something that looked like it was pretty good, and then after a month or so, I realized, or I thought that it wasn't that good. And you never really know, and you don't know whether to destroy it or to keep it. That's always a difficult problem for artists. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of great artists that have destroyed. Who was I? Yeah, Francis Bacon, I just heard the other day, destroyed all his early work. And then that's really too bad, considering what an extraordinary artist he was. But it's, you know, and then once you decide that it's good and you're working on it, one time the Venetian series, which we're not going to see tonight, I made those with Lino, the Italian, in my studio in Seattle. I made this series that I wasn't even going to try to show. I was just kind of working with Lino because he wanted to, and then the pieces got more bizarre and more interesting. And I had a show coming up in New York, like a week or two later, and I decided I liked those pieces so much that I put them in the show. I used them for the show, and that's really risky when you do that. And if you find out you don't like what you've done, I get rid of it usually. So that's one of the hardest things for an artist. I don't know how it works for scientists, but for an artist, you have to be able to tell if your work's any good. And there's really nobody that can tell you that. There's a lot of people that will tell you, but that's really your call. And sometimes you don't hit it 100%. I'll go over here and then there. I was actually looking at the guy in the shirt, but either one of you. I have never heard that claimed. No. I've had some problems with glassblowers that worked for me and then went out and did their own work, and that might have been a little closer than I wanted. But I've never had anybody tell me what you said. But I'd be curious who said it. Wait a minute. Let's see. All right. Up. No, in the colored shirt, sweater.
Gregory Burns, who's a neuroscientist, refers to you in your book called Iconoclast. And he says you didn't really become an iconoclast until you lost the vision of your left eye. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your change in visual perception changed your creative vision.
I don't think I can do that. I'd like to try, but I couldn't follow it very well. One more. All right, you.
I saw your exhibit at the Geoff Museum this summer as well, and I thought it was wonderful. But I read some articles that criticized it for being more decoration.
Oh, I got a terrible review from The San Francisco Chronicle. The only thing about that was good is that you know, they often say just spell the name right. And there was no doubt that review brought a lot more people in to see the show. Yeah. It doesn't work that way in theater, you know. I mean, I feel sorry for theater people that get a bad one person doesn't like your play and nobody goes. That by the way, that review had more response than anything that has been in the San Francisco Chronicle.
I was wondering just how you reacted to that type of criticism and how you would categorize your work as like art.
Well, I'll do the first part. You know, a lot of times I don't even read the reviews, and sometimes I don't even read the books. But I did read that review. I knew I was going to get a bad review because he reviewed me about 15 years before at the San Jose Museum when I had a show. So there was little doubt in my mind that he'd give me. I didn't think he'd give me that bad a review. But he also gave a bad review. I think it was the San Jose Museum as well, to my best friend, Italo Sconga, an Italian artist who's unfortunately no longer with us. But he's tough, that guy. All right, last one. Am I going to show Jerusalem? It's the next one. That's the wrong one, isn't it, Peter?
What is it about the light in Jerusalem? You know, the city of light. Can't explain exactly what it is. It's a feeling, it's a look. But it has it. It has this beautiful golden light that bathes Jerusalem.
It grew up, I think, in Chihuly's mind that the best place to celebrate the millennium would be Jerusalem and, of course, the citadel in the year 2000. So Chihuly had an idea of using this material, the glass, that actually was founded in this part of the world, that experts said that the first blowing glass was done here, maybe in this city, and was brought from here to Rome, to Europe, and bring his kind of making glass, which is as far challenging as making glass could go to, and bring it back to where it belongs, where it all started. And we started to work on a project that when we started, none of us knew what it will be in the end.
So in the Citadel, I really wanted to take, you know, glass to its glorious height. You know, really make something special where the glass, you know, really spoke to the audience. I was overwhelmed, really. Could I take on the Citadel? Could I really put pieces in that could hold their own in this extraordinary structure?
Every time I look at the site, there was something else I wanted to do. Pieces got bigger, pieces got taller, pieces got wider. The next thing you knew, it was 14 installations that went as high as 46 feet high.
It's amazing to do this, to come from one sketch to something real. That's really big, because on paper it's only 8 inches tall, not 45 feet tall. But that's the challenge, to do it in a way that doesn't hurt anything or people, and to make it what Dale wants.
Go ahead and take that one, Noel, and shove it in with the spears somewhere.
As for myself, when I saw the tons and tons and kilometers of iron come into the citadel in the last few weeks, I was shocked. I was terrified. I said, what are we doing here? But day by day, when the things are being built, you realize that Dale had the perfect idea of what he was doing here. You can see the best composition of putting the right towers just in front of the old towers.
And the rebars or the I-beams are really going away.
Yeah, that one I-beam almost goes away a lot, doesn't it? Thank God.
It's okay. Especially when the sun is going up and down. Those perimeter pieces on that axis. Yeah, so get a, in particular, get the ones sticking out in that shot. Dale's like a catalyst. He starts a creative process. That process is picked up by a variety of people, depending on whether it goes to glass blowers or whether it comes to us or whether it goes to the architects or whatever. And then the ball sort of gets passed back to Dale, and he sort of examines this creative mass, you know, and either throws it out or likes what he sees or adds something to it or adds a lot to it.
Much of what I do comes from working and making things, looking at things, reacting to situations. Just like I worked when I was a glass blower, when I was making the glass myself. You know, you go in and blow the glass, and it takes you someplace different every day if you let it. I decide one day as I'm walking around trying to figure out where to put things, I decide I'm going to put the white tower right in the middle of the whole exhibition, below this arch. And everybody was very leery about it because when they unpacked it, people weren't really relating to the parts very well because they're mostly opaque. The white's opaque. But for some reason, it seemed like, you know, it needed to go there. And lo and behold, we put it there, and it looked fantastic. I love the idea that doing this project in Jerusalem, we were very near where glass blowing was invented and where glass was invented. And of course, what's left over from that, those early times, is Hebron still has a couple of glass blowing shops. You know, these glass shops have been there for something like 500 years, you know, still blowing glass in the same way, you know, not using a glass blowing bench, but actually turning the blowpipe on their legs, you know, with this little furnace. And you know, the furnaces were very much like they were 500 years ago, very crude. But of course, our shop and our furnaces are really very similar to what they were like 1,000 years ago in Venice. There's really not much of a way to improve upon it.
How many can they make by Tuesday?
How much do you want?
25 this size, 25 that size.
You know, to be able to do one of the pieces that from the Hebron glass blowers is something I sort of really wanted to do. I didn't know if we'd be able to have the time to pull it off, but we did. We were able to go over there for a day and see what they made and talk to them, and blow glass with them a little bit, and then order up a bunch of parts for an installation, which was the last one we did here.
Initially, we weren't going to have as many pieces. They weren't going to be as large. But I wanted to be able to really, get a grip on the Citadel so that when people came in, they could experience the exhibition and really feel the force and the magic and the joy of the glass to transform the visitor in some way if they were willing to be. Whatever happened in the Citadel, whatever we did, people wanted to see it. They came out to see it, and they came back to see it. They saw the light, they saw the color.
The popularity is really amazing. It's Christians, it's Jews and Muslims. It's tourists coming from all over the world to see the exhibition. It's like having a collage of all the kinds of people you can think of.
And I think this exhibition probably proved it to me, how much art is needed in people's lives.
So did we start at 6:30? We did, didn't we? So now it's been an hour and a half, and I don't usually like to go that long. I'm willing to, I'll show one more, the wall of ice in Jerusalem. But why don't those of you that need to go, this is a good time to leave, and we'll show one more. I was so proud of this show in Jerusalem that I wanted to kind of give something back. And I'd always wanted to do something, with, well, I had worked with ice before, but never to this scale. So you're about to see a piece that I think it was 2 or 3 containers, Peter. Maybe it was 3. And 3 containers full of ice shipped from Alaska, and we built the wall. And then after this one, we'll stop. So I'm sorry that we don't get to see the gardens in glass, but everybody has to get back to their television. Pardon? Wait a minute. I didn't. One at a time. Oh, they want to see the garden? All right. Those that want to leave after the wall of ice, feel free to cut out anytime. And then we'll show the gardens of glass. They're only 5 minutes each. I don't know if I've ever seen the gardens in glass.
This project started in a way 5 years ago because I was giving a lecture up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I showed my slides and I showed one of the old ice pieces in the lecture. And afterwards, some guy from the audience came up and said, I love ice too, and I'm an ice sculptor. And here near the Fairbanks, we have this extraordinary ice, that is the clearest, most beautiful ice you've ever seen, and it's, it freezes 6 feet thick, and we cut out these big blocks. And he started showing me some photographs, and one of them was of a forklift with this, monster cube of ice on it. The sculptures themselves, didn't get my attention, but this cube of ice was, just phenomenal. One of the greatest photographs I've ever seen. Now I've since looked at that photograph, and it's, to see this cube on a forklift moving across the earth, it just inspired me to want to use it somehow.
Okay, stop him.
Well, actually, my first thought was I want to take the ice to the Negev desert. That was my first thought, because when I think of desert, I think of Negev. There are a lot of great deserts in the world,
I've been to many of them, but to me, it's always Negev. It doesn't have to be that big a wall.
Right.
Keep this in mind. How many blocks we got?
26 now.
Okay, 26. If we only used, 15 or 18 of them for the wall, that would be enough. It's just become a big project. It was a little idea maybe, some months ago. I wanted to do some special piece here because so many people from around the world and in Israel and have come to see the project. I think I was told there were 250,000 people now have seen the installations in the Citadel, and it's a real honor for me to have people receive my work in such a way.
Yeah.
We're going to build the wall up about 4 or 5 meters high, and then it's going to start to melt tomorrow. And we don't know how long. We don't know how long it's going to last. It might last a day. It might last a week. It might last 2 weeks. We really don't know because we've never worked with ice of this scale. I never know exactly, why I do things. I mean, it just comes from my gut. I see the relationship to the Citadel. I mean, look at those stones up there that King Herod or somebody put in there. Almost identical size stones as these blocks of ice. Imagine this being built, 2,000 years ago. I mean, what an architectural feat. What a city. To have water turn to crystal and have liquid glass turn to crystal. I mean, they're both an extraordinary phenomenon. Probably, two of the most incredible things, one an act of man and one an act of nature. And so I've always loved ice. You got green and blue right at the same blocks.
Well, that's just the wall. They're not going to work, all at once,
That's what you don't understand. I want them on all at once. All 40 on at once.
All right.
I want all the energy going in here at the same time.
Oh, no,
I just want it full blast light. This is sort of an ending party of the, the biggest project I've ever done in my life. Also the most rewarding project I've ever done in my life. And I wanted to do a piece that would be a bit celebratory. And also I wanted to do this ice, more than anything, I wanted to work with this ice. Now, what I didn't understand and didn't know was the quality of the ice. Never having worked with it, I didn't know what the blocks were going to look like. But as you can see, I mean, there's all this variety within the blocks. Some of them are clear, some of them have fissures, some of them have bubbles, some of them, look like a laser beam had been shooting through them. You have an idea, comes from somewhere, and it works. It always comes from deep down somewhere. You don't know why you do it. You don't know what makes it work. You don't even know until afterwards, maybe, what happened. It just sort of happened. Any questions about the ice or about anything, for that matter? All the way up there. You. Somebody tell me that one from down here.
How do you get glass blowers on your team?
How many glass blowers on the team?
How do you choose it? Who wants to be on your team?
How do I choose them? It's mostly done. It was done different ways at different times. Now, I've really only got about a dozen glass blowers, probably, and Seattle has become this center for glass making. I don't know if I already told you this, but
there are about 100 glass shops in Seattle. And there are, 2,000 or 3,000 glass blowers. And all these glass blowers know each other for the most part. And like, if you're a glass blower working for me and you want to develop your own work, some do, some don't, then you have to rent somebody's shop. And there are certain shops that are known that you can rent. And then you also have to put together at least 2 or 3 people to assist you, if not 4 or 5. And because this is going on all the time, they really do get to know each other. So the guy that runs my hot shop, I don't think he's been in the video. Joey DeCamp, he's kind of a short guy. Joey, figures out who he wants to hire. And it's also very good for us to travel, because if we go to other places, we run into people that we like and tell them that we'll give them a job if they come to Seattle. I guess that about explains it. I don't have much to do with it.
So in your first video, it shows you painting.
On plastic?
I expected that somehow that design would wind up in the glass. Did you ever do anything like that?
Well, you mean physically that thing would end up in the glass? No. No, you can't. That might be a good idea. You could put, that was plastic, acrylic, and that was just done for the movie. Although, no, I shouldn't say that. I do acrylic drawings. Drawings on acrylic. We just did one in Macau for the MGM Casino. We did a wall about 12 or 15 feet high and about 50 feet long. Pardon? Oh, no, I thought you said so. And about 50 feet long, made up of about 40 panels of acrylic. And then behind that, we had the LED lights. And somebody working for me had the brilliant idea of how do we put these acrylic panels up so that you couldn't see, the molding, because somehow they got to stay up there. And so what did he come up with? Magnets. And you don't see the magnets; they're behind the piece, and because there's drawings on them, you don't see that. And I've done several pieces made out of plastic that we've kind of developed on our own or bought. But I don't know, have I ever done plastic with glass? Barry says no. He's probably right. I can't think of anything either. Okay, one more. Well, you were first in the black, is it?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say I saw the exhibit in 2000, and that's what made me decide I wanted to be a glass blower. But I always wondered why the Citadel did it. Of everywhere in Jerusalem.
Why the Citadel did it? That's an interesting story. I met a guy that was a curator at the Israel Museum, and he was going to put together a glass show. He himself actually was a glass artist as well. And he came to my studio, and I had met him before somewhere. A really nice guy. And about a month later, I'd heard that he died in a swimming pool. And I just decided that I'd fly over for the memorial service a month later. And I did. I met that gal that you saw in the video, Shosh, who was the director of that. And there was actually, now that I'm remembering, he knew I really didn't want to be in the group show, that if I was going to do something, I'd want to have a one-man show. And I've always been that way. And so he had begun to kind of look around, and he had talked to her about that. That was a place that he thought of, knowing what my work was like. And so I talked to her, and I don't think it took very long before we, a few communications later, we decided to do it. And then I went over there, Usually, you know, one time will do for me to see a space and figure out what I want to do, right or wrong. Once is enough. And with that one, I went over about 5 times. That one really got under my skin. And like I said in the video, I really, really wanted to make it show up because it's not such a big space. I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe 3 acres or something. But it was such a powerful space. Okay, we'll show the last one, and then we'll leave.
I, have a love of greenhouses. I always have. In fact, I tend to call them glass houses or greenhouses. The conservatory term is more of an American one, but I use all those 3 words interchangeable: greenhouse, glass house, conservatory. I've always had an interest in gardens and conservatories. My mother had a big garden, and I went to school in architecture, and so I've always had an interest in glass houses. And so the idea of being able to bring my work, it's sort of inside but yet in nature at the same time, it's really a kind of an ideal background for my work. These things, they really belong in nature, these things. Look at this piece. Those were the last ones we did, I think, weren't they?
How about something in here?
Which one? This one right here?
No, this open space right here with this rock.
What I like is that tree.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh, it's a...
Like a philodendron.
climbing up a concrete column. I don't even mind that sprinkler. Yeah. I like it to look like a greenhouse.
Nice. Yeah.
I don't know much about plants, although my mother was a great, great gardener. And we always had beautiful gardens around the house. Perhaps some of the, my early influences very easily could have been the garden, because we had a modest house in an average kind of neighborhood, but the garden was very big, It had 90 rhododendrons and about the same amount of azaleas. And so I think that flowers have probably had a big influence on me.
This is important. Make them as big as we can. Bigger, the better.
I don't know why I work so large. I very often push a series to its maximum size. I think sometimes I do it just to keep the glassblowers at the very edge of their technical ability, to keep the tension high, to make it exciting, to make it so that we don't know whether it's going to break or not break. If you know exactly what you're doing and you can make it every time, it's not going to be interesting. It has to have this tension if the pieces are going to be good. And so we constantly push ourselves. You know, I push them, they push me. I try to get them to go beyond what they can do. It's more interesting that way.
It's sure nice to get that waterfall, even if it's just temporary. If you get the stems up high, then you can show the whole waterfall. Could go anywhere in there, Tom.
If we do a big show in a museum, we sort of go from gallery to gallery, and you know there's going to be something around the corner. Here, it's much more of a surprise. And of course, my work just looks like it's meant to be here. It's such a great feeling to walk through a greenhouse and look and smell and the atmosphere. Every time I'm in a greenhouse, I say to myself, why don't I go into greenhouses more often, because they're so beautiful. I hope that it gets people that are interested in gardens and greenhouses to get them interested in art, and vice versa. So because lots of people are missing out by not going to conservatories, and that would be the majority of people probably. And they are, once you get inside here, it's another world.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very, very much. It's a great privilege to see this.
Glad you liked it.